Hello gamers, today we are going through Alan Wake for why it should win Game of the Year. We've been doing this for all of the nominees at the Game Awards. Now, regular watchers of the channel will know that Eric usually hosts these and likes to grill all of the guests on which game should win, but today we are changing things around. I was thoroughly rinsed from my choice of Spider-Man 2, so it's now my opportunity to grill Eric on why exactly Alan Wake should win Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Eric, why should it win, and will it win?
Let me just say first, terrified to have this convo with you. You already tipped your hand that it might not make your top 10 list.
Correct.
So we are not exactly aligned on Alan Wake 2. But let me say this. Alan Wake 2, there are people who think that it could win. I think that it is a clear third. But I love a dark horse. I love an underdog, and I think that this is definitely the dark horse pick of the year.
Everybody keeps telling me that it's the dark horse, that it's, Baldur's Gate and Zelda are the top two. I know the Game Awards don't reveal the order of votes, but I would be. This is the year I think I'd be most interested to see the rundown, because everyone seems to think it's one of those two is going to be first, probably Baldur's Gate. Alan Wake nailed on for third. I'm not sure I agree with that. But what I want to get into first of all is I know the reason that you love this most of all is the story. The thing that I can't really argue with. It's the reason why it's in contention for my list. What is it about the story that makes it not just a good game, not just a good story, but Game of the Year?
Yeah. For me, it comes down to the ambition of the narrative structure of the game.
Sure.
I think that the way this story is told and the way that you as the player get to decide how the story is told is like wholly unique to this game and experimental, and also something you could only do in a game. And I'm always a big fan of experimental narratives, and I'm always really impressed when games like this try to push the medium forward. But often those experiences are not very accessible. I think last year's Immortality is a masterpiece.
Yeah,
I love games like that, but also those games are very alienating. They're very niche because they're so esoteric and high concept. And Alan Wake 2 is that, but for a general audience. Like, it is a totally mainstream AAA big blockbuster game that has these like really deep storytelling ambitions, and it nails both of those things. It's like this is the gateway into high concept storytelling for people, and I think that's something that's really important.
Why do you think it has nailed that? Because we talked yesterday when we were talking about Spider-Man, we mentioned kind of how Baldur's Gate has kind of stayed in the conversation, has become more approachable than one might think for its genre.
Right.
Why do you think Alan Wake has landed for the general public in a way that something like Immortality didn't?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is the way it blends its influences. So it plays like a prestige TV drama. A lot of people compare it to True Detective, and the developers were upfront that was a big influence. And it has those like qualities of an HBO show, the way that The Last of Us did. But it goes so much further with its storytelling, and I think that people can like relate to the camp elements of it, and people can relate to the like prestige TV drama elements of it, and then accept all of the weird and accept all of the parts that don't make sense. They sort of let that wash over them, and they don't feel like alienated by it.
Yeah, I think I've certainly been surprised by how many people have just accepted that. Yeah, I don't get this bit, but that's okay because I'm having a good time.
Right.
I want to know where it leads.
Where you don't get that with Immortality, right?
No,
like people that don't get it are mad about it.
You have to be like deep into Immortality to it, and you have to play for a while to get it. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yesterday you said I'm Reddit. Justify it to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be slightly different. Say I'm Twitter, and I think they have slightly different audiences. I'm X.
Yeah.
best narrative is a category.
Right.
Why it should win best narrative? I'm not going to fight you on that. Why should having the best narrative make a game of the year? Shouldn't it just get its own story award?
It should also get that award. At least we agree on that. I think that while its narrative structure is its biggest strength and what makes it so special, that's not the only thing that's so special about it. I think it's as a atmosphere and like tonal piece, it's essentially perfect. I think that it's got some of the scariest things I've ever experienced in a game. It's evocative from beginning to end. There are sequences in this game that deserve their own awards for categories we don't have.
Yeah.
Like the musical sequence we sing.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to say Alan Wake 2 is game of the year because of We Sing.
That's a big argument.
I could, but I feel like I could pull many moments and many small examples out and say like this game is transcended for this one thing, and then there's like a dozen of those things.
Okay. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of people on your side with this, but I think, when people click this video, why Alan Wake 2 should win Game of the Year, there's going to be one question on everybody's lips. What was your favourite fuse to collect? No, come on. The gameplay's not great. Some of the gameplay is not great. Let's be fair about that.
So, I'm easily swayed because I have often said, and probably in videos on this channel, that I love everything about Remedy's games except actually playing them.
Yeah.
I am not. Control did win Game of the Year, did it not?
I believe it did. It was at the same game. I was thinking of this before, and I can't remember if that one or Sekiro, but it was. I think it did.
Yeah, and I don't like playing that game. I think mechanically it's very clunky. It's the combat is quite not anti-fun for me, but it has everything else going for it. And I think for me, and I think for a lot of other people, Alan Wake 2 tips it over the edge. Remedy has finally figured out how to match everything else it does well to actual usable mechanics that feel good. I think like the pop of the flashlight is so satisfying, and it like in the same way that like throwing Kratos' axe never gets old. I think like the flashlight mechanic always hits through the whole game. I think that many of the combat experiences, the way that you have to like quick dodge attacks, flip your camera around from guys that are zipping back and forth, I think all of that works really well, and it feels really satisfying to get good at the combat in this game in the way that it does in Resident Evil or any other action survival horror style game. So I think Remedy's history is holding this game back, because I think that it actually is a pretty competent shooter.
That's interesting, because I actually prefer the gameplay and control. I don't know if it's because you're in one place. I don't know if it's because the gun feels a little bit more natural. But what I obviously we need to talk about just the technical aspects of this game. You mentioned the kind of the flashlight, the angel light, I think it's called in the game. There's some of the set pieces in this game that are just on a technical level,
right?
Just so impressive. Are they going to swing it? Because you talk about Baldur's Gate and Zelda as two runners. They're really big in scope, and Zelda has some really cool mechanics to it. But in terms of snap mechanic, one thing that just changes it. I feel like the stuff in Alan Wake that I haven't, even though it might not be on my list, I feel like stuff I haven't seen before. Is that going to be a big factor, do you think, in it?
I think that really feeds into this like artistic expression and ambition meets those like AAA benchmark qualities. People are so obsessed with like graphical fidelity and the new lighting, reflection, all that stuff that does not really matter, but these are like quantifiable things that people believe like elevate games, and we get so focused on Puddlegate and Spider-Man and all this stupid stuff, but people really think that's important because it's measurable. And Alan Wake has all of those things. It is the best looking game of the year. It's going to age the best. It is designed to work on hardware that doesn't exist yet. Much like Cyberpunk, it's a game that's just going to keep getting better looking year after year. And, people just think that's really important. And that's like a checkbox for game of the year. So while it's weird that I'm arguing in favor of it, but yeah, I think that the stuff with the angel light that just like instantly transforms an environment is such a neat trick. It's such an instantly recognizable, like, oh, this is something really special. This is something I've never seen before. That pushes it over the top for sure.
You mentioned there that the comparison to Cyberpunk, not usually a very good portent for the Game Award. Though it has been nominated the last 3 years. Yeah, it stays in there. But do you think it's going to count against it, either with voters, or do you just think it should? I don't know. Ethically is not the right word, but in general, people have very, very good PCs and they can't run this. I can't run this on my PC. My PC is pretty decent. It runs most games. I played this on console, which worked fine, but there was a lot of issues that I have a great PC and I can't play Alan Wake. Is that an issue?
No, because Baldur's Gate is completely broken, right? That game's a buggy mess. This is just games now. What on this list didn't have massive issues? Just Mario, I think. Mario's the only game that came out like polished and bug-free. I will concede that I had a very buggy experience with Alan Wake 2. I fell through the floor often. I got hard locked by NPCs that wouldn't talk to me when they were supposed to like move a quest forward. And all we can say is what we always say is like, they'll fix these things eventually, but none of those things had a negative impact on my experience with this game, just because I had such a profound experience with it. It was unlike anything else I played this year. I played all of the games on this list are incredible, and I played other games that aren't on this list that are incredible. And this is the only game that really moved me this year. This is the only game that I was like, wow, like I feel inspired. I feel like I want to see what else gaming can do. This isn't just a refinement or an evolution of a formula. This is something completely new.
Yeah, I think most people who have Alan Wake's back, if you like, are really pushing that quite hard. It's unique. I think you described it as like a present under the tree, and there's the big ones, there's the expensive ones, there's kind of the really flashy ones, and there's just those weird ones that are kind of an odd shape and you don't know what they are, but you want to open them just because that's the feeling that I think a lot of people got from Alan Wake. Yeah, exactly.
It's like I know all of the other games here are known quantities, and I love them, but this is something that's like, I don't know what it is, but it intrigues me. And I think that's what makes it really stand out.
You've mentioned Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom as being the two frontrunners. I think most people would say, in terms of likelihood, they are the two frontrunners. With Spider-Man, you made me say kind of why should it win over those two games. For you, I'm also going to throw in Resident Evil 4, because I know we both love Resident Evil 4. Alan Wake 2 takes a lot of cues from it. You mentioned it yourself when you're talking about the action sequences. Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. Certainly my favorite horror game. Yeah. It was perfected this year. Why should an interloper to the genre that doesn't, have the history and the prestige that Resident Evil, I'm being Twitter again. Why doesn't it? Why should that win over Resident Evil with all of its history and and also Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom, of course?
Yeah. I at risk of I guess being a bit reductive, I played Resident Evil 4. It blew me away. I thought, how could Resident Evil 4 get better? And it did. It got so much better in the remake. And I was captivated by every moment of that game. And I thought they've managed to make a game that's nothing but set pieces. Yeah. And I thought that was so impressive. And it is I think it's the best like survival horror game there is. Alan Wake 2 is not just a survival horror game. It's a mixed media experience. It's an FMV. It's really shocking horror that Resident Evil doesn't even get close to in any of Resident Evil.
Yeah, there's definitely darker and more cerebral stuff in Alan Wake.
yeah, there are many more layers to Alan Wake. It is many more different kinds of games, and it's much more ambitious than Resident Evil is. And yeah, while I love them both, Alan Wake is the kind of game that I want to put up on a pedestal and say, other games need to strive for this. We need more of this. We're going to get more Resident Evil 4s. Like that's the status quo for games in 2023. Alan Wake 2 is not. Alan Wake 2 is something different. And I think like if we have an opportunity to elevate a game like that, we should.
Are Baldur's and Tear, and I don't like Zelda, but I know people do. Are Baldur and Tears of the Kingdom, are they something different as well, or? I understand the argument against Resident Evil. I don't think we're likely to get very many games like Baldur's Gate or Tears of the Kingdom in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think so. Tears of the Kingdom, absolutely, but also, go with me on this here. I think it's a bit of a creative dead end. I mean, even Nintendo isn't going to do Tears of the Kingdom again. The next Zelda is going to be something very different.
Yeah,
and what it does is impressive. But I feel like those are things that belong to that game, and no one else is going to do a Tears of the Kingdom for risk of just being a Tears of the Kingdom clone, if nothing else, right? Like, I think that game is kind of the end of the Tears of the Kingdom's mechanics and innovations.
It's not going to inspire any future games the way you think Alan Wake will.
No, I don't believe so. And then Baldur's Gate 3 is just like the immersive tabletop RPG experience everyone's always wanted. It's sort of like the pinnacle of the CRPG. But that's not very innovative. I mean, they put more time and money into it than we've ever seen before for a game like that, which is typically a very niche genre. And its success means that we will see more games like that, and I think that's a good thing. But it's not anything we haven't seen before. It's just the best version of it.
Yeah, people have been trying to make Baldur's Gate 3 for 20 years. They just haven't been able to. I guess we'll see if that's raised the jury or the voters. But I think that's a pretty strong case. I think the narrative doesn't sway me as much personally, because it's a great story, but there is a category for story. The idea that it will inspire future things and it offers a platform or a foundation for other games to build upon. The Resident Evil argument I found really convincing, because I love Resident Evil. I think you made some good points there. But we'll see. Everyone seems like it's destined for third place. Anything else that you want to add? Make your case one last time.
I think that Alan Wake definitely comes across as the most inaccessible of the 6 games on this list. It may seem like, oh, I need to play all these other games. I need to play the first one and Control's DLC and like get all of this. And you should do those things because they're all great and they all build on each other. But another thing that's remarkable about Alan Wake 2 is that it is self-contained enough that you will get a lot out of it, even if this is the only one you play. And I think that's another reason that it deserves the nod here.
Okay. I think I'm going to retire from hosting duties. Do you want to do the whole send off yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for watching. You can read my full argument for why Alan Wake 2 should win Game of the Year on The Gamer. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and visit us at thegamer.com. That's The Gamer, no space.